Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Nullform No. 2 by Dem Mikhailov, translated by Colin Parker, narrated by Jeffrey Kafer. Chapter 1. "Blow up and die," I said resentfully through gritted teeth, carefully massaging the soles of my feet, all the while listening in to the sensations in my head. What nonsense. My feet hurt, but my head doesn't. You can tell what I do for a living. Still, it's nice not to have even a hint of a hangover, especially considering yesterday we each had 3 doubles of that really strong moonshine. We had known how good the product would be, but the Lamers Brigade, a.k.a. Solar Flame, hadn't pulled any fast ones on us, and the booze hadn't left us hungover. Current time, 0550. I had crawled out of my capsule 5 minutes ago, hissing silently and hobbling on both legs, made it to a warm wall ledge, and was now simultaneously inspecting my whole body, massaging my limbs back into shape, and running through yesterday's events in my head. I spent 5 minutes processing memories and impressions, and the next 5 checking my interface and contemplating the dawning day. I'd only had 5 hours sleep, and would have loved to chill for a while on a warm but not too soft bed in a safe capsule, but something had woken me 10 minutes early, making me emerge into the drafty corridor and perch myself next to a dozen snoring worker orcs. They'd not managed to find a capsule and were forced to spend the night on benches. A guard had even been posted, and there he was, snoozing, slumped against the wall. If I were his commander, I'd wake him with an awl stab. What had gotten me out of the capsule? Definitely some past event. Something I missed yesterday had disappeared, but later returned quietly and stolen into my dream. And that night's dream I could remember vividly, a replay of the evening in the Jolly Plucks. An almost exact replay of real events, except we were drinking red wine instead of moonshine. The meat we ate was raw and bloody, and we laughed as we wiped our red-stained lips with napkins made of tattooed human skin, while at the next table a group of worms were celebrating something, growlingly lapping red slop from enamel bowls and producing drawling belches. That's it. Continuing my foot massage, I drew myself up slightly and squinted. That's it. The tattooed skin napkins. Or rather, the tattoos themselves. Somewhere here, something here, there was a clue here. That was why the dead tattooed skin had floated to the surface in an otherwise unremarkable dream. Yesterday at supper we drank our second shot and returned greedily to devouring fried meat. And at that moment, closing my eyes in bliss and chewing, I had sensed something. No, I had seen something. Definitely. I lowered my fork, still chomping ravenously, turned my eyes toward the entrance, assessed the waitress's wiggling butt, 3 out of 5, looked a bit further, found a new object of attention, mechanically appraised that without attaching too much significance to it, and turned away. Definitely. All I had to do was remember that moment, and I immediately recalled everything else. Nothing special. Trifles. My memory had obligingly begun to throw out details and trifles, and the most lucid-colored picture appeared before my eyes. I saw the company at the next table, and no, they weren't worms banqueting. They were orcs and halflings sprawled around a low table. 4 men aged somewhere between 35 and 50, and 2 girls who were a tad younger but didn't look like paid table or mattress decorations. They looked like they owned the place, elbows on knees, one lazily picking her teeth with a knife, the other poking a piece of meat with a huge cutlass. She had already eaten her fill, but was clearly enjoying poking the firm fried flesh with her sharp point. The table was richly spread with glasses, bottles, and piles of fried meat. These were prosperous Nullforms, one might even say wealthy, since the meat alone would stretch to 300 sol at a rough guess. They had shelled out at least 500 sol for the whole feast, an insane amount by Outskirts standards. Judging by the fact they were all sated while there was still plenty of meat left, they were not used to going hungry, if they had ever been hungry at all. What else? They were wolves. All of them, the men and the girls, looked like fighters, not workers. They were dressed decently, but inconspicuously. Coats or cloaks, pants, boots, heavy backpacks. I saw no big weapons. They were doubtless hidden among the pile of overgarments by the wall, but the company kept their knives with them and had awls at their belts. Not just any old awls, but high-quality DIY awls fashioned from standard shanks, the kind that run through the middle of clubs, sharpened and furnished with rubber handles and straps. Convenient, beautiful, practical, and respect-commanding. Sitting by the entrance was a broad-shouldered fellow of around 50, whose right cheek was liberally pocked with small round scars, as though someone had tried to perforate it with a thick awl. The brim of his baseball cap obscured his eyes, but just then he looked up to answer the girl sitting next to him, and I saw what he was looking at. Yorka, who sat with her back to him. To be more precise, he couldn't stop staring at her right arm, which was partially covered by the sleeve of her black T-shirt. To be even more precise, he was staring at Yorka's distinctive new arm, which was thickly covered with incomprehensible tattoos. Oddly, the guys themselves are dressed so that their arms and legs are not visible, though needless to say their faces were. But I saw no tattoos, meaning none of them bore even the slightest tint of indelible ink blemishing the skin. The man's unfaltering stare, with its glimmer of recognition, was what I'd noticed the day before but paid no heed to. Idiot. Had I exerted myself earlier rather than several hours later, I would have spotted a load more important details. Either I was wildly mistaken or he recognized Yorka's new arm. So what now? Nothing. Although I would now be watching Yorka's back twice as closely, just in case. Current time, 05:55. I tried to turn myself to today, but images of yesterday and flashes of my dream swam obstinately up in my mind. Checking my interface was the only way to motivate myself. Status, physical condition, finances, jobs, status. Number, 11. Rank, Nullform volitional. Current status, NWL-B, 3 enhanced meals a day, standard water ration, standard additional supplies. Now that's interesting, I snickered, feeling my good mood return. NWL-B? Fighter orc? No, thank you. I'll stay goblin for now, enhanced meal, etc. I studied every line, thoughtfully scratching my lightly stubbled cheek. I was not going to try or probe just yet. It was too early to celebrate, but what I saw didn't look bad. And once again, everything had a machine-like logic to it. Fighters walk at least twice as far in a day as normal workers. Where do normals need to go? They wake up, have breakfast, show up at the day's work location, fulfill their normal load, and return to their cluxes. Lunch, idle chatter, supper, idle chatter, sleep. Standard feeding and injections is quite enough to cover energy spent, and earnings go toward personal needs, if you're an orc as opposed to a wretched goblin. And fighters. First they have to complete the job, including getting to the location and back, then drag themselves through 2 or 3 kilometers of patrolling, for example, and then another urgent combat mission might appear. All this requires strength and vigor. Increased recovery speed is also desirable. I wonder what my vigor and recovery are looking like. Overall physical condition, normal. Limb condition and status. URL, normal. ULL, normal. LRL, normal. LLL, normal. Additional information. Body fighting consequences of acute intoxication, mild toxicosis. At first I was worried, but after a second I breathed a sigh of relief as I realized the information had not been updated. The body cannot do its own diagnostics, and in order to be updated, you need to drop into the nearest med block and pay a soul to receive fresh data. Balance, 38. 4 souls had been taken for today's rent of my set of limbs. Another 2 for accommodation and a shower. I wasn't going to sleep caked in dried blood. Out of the 9 shots, the first 3 had been free. The other 6 cost 4 sol apiece. That's where all my money had gone. But I didn't panic. There would be jobs and there would be money. Job. Patrol. Important additional details. Be at the location no later than 12 o'clock. Upon the double signal, relieve the previous patrol. Description. Patrol main hallway 29 from Section 80 to Section 110. Eliminate any pluxes on site. Upon receiving a system indication, destroy the target indicated. Location. Main hallway 29 from Section 80 to Section 110. Deadline, until 1500, hand over duty to an incoming patrol upon the double signal. Compensation, 45 sol. The combat task came first, a priority clearly indicated by the system. And Main 29 again. Evidently, it was the most problematic part of the outskirts. If I understood correctly, 29 ran in a gigantic arc, past Cursed Bridge and the stench, and extending further to places even Bask knew next to nothing about. He said only that somewhere around Section 70 was Clux 16, and if he went another 5 kilometers, he came to Clux 15, nicknamed the Plague Clux. Many years ago, it had been home to an epidemic which claimed the lives of several hundred goblins. It took the system quite some time to bring the situation under control, but it stopped the spread of the infection by blocking passages with armor-plated partitions, and combat squads were ordered to fire at anybody approaching to a distance of less than 30 paces. Every day I discovered more about local places, and I was prepared to give credit where credit was due, for these sobriquets stuck fast in the mind. Perhaps Clux 15 was not instantly memorable, but just try forgetting the moniker Plague Clux. The names of population centers did not mean much to the inhabitants of this part of the outskirts, since they didn't travel far. Work tasks were assigned so that workers did not have to walk more than 3 or 4 kilometers, 5 at a stretch. And a goblin nicely settled in Clux 17 was unlikely to suddenly undertake a long journey just to gawk at Clux 15, which looked absolutely no different from the outside. Although everyone had probably been to Cursed Bridge at least once, for it was an impressive sight. Job: delivery and installation of blocks. Important additional details. Take a block from number 63 at Section 1 of Main Hallway 30 between 7 o'clock and 10 o'clock. Proceed with delivery of block. On the way, keep an eye on the block, protect the block, do not lose the block, do not trust the block. Upon arrival at the location, before installing the block, no earlier, this is extremely important, remove, extract, pull out, the plastic safety tab from the block. Insert the block, correct red side first, into receptacles 22-5, 22-6, 22-9, hallway 214. Description: delivery and installation of blocks. Location: Zone 27, hallway 214. Deadline: 12 o'clock. Compensation: 15 sol. Now then. I read the information, shook my head, and read it again. This was clearly spoon-feeding for the idiots. The system tried to make its texts as understandable as possible, although the result was quite the opposite. There was no damn way to make sense of it, but you had to take it extremely seriously. A new kind of job, unlike anything we'd done before. I was confident the other members of the group would have exactly the same job. 3 blocks in total, and a disturbing number of reminders concerning them. Keep an eye on them, protect them, don't lose them, be wary of them. Protect the block, be wary of the block. Protected from who, for fuck's sake? The obvious first question was, what kind of blocks are they? But no one was going to tell me that. How heavy were they? No info, but probably not light. Yorka and I had backpacks. We had to quickly find a backpack for Bask the zombie, grab a quick something to eat, do some diagnostics, get our jabs, and move out. Both today's tasks were time-limited. I'd already begun to yearn for that sweet-sounding until evening end-of-work alarm. The first section of Main 30 was right by Cursed Bridge, the place where 4 combat orcs were slain yesterday. Current time, 5:59. The zombie crawled out of his capsule, sat on the ground, yawned loudly, and pulled his baseball cap down to cover his disfigured face. He leaned his head to one side and listened. I knocked on a bench 3 times, a pause, another 3 times. Rising softly, Bask felt himself and, sliding his hands along the bed in the capsule, began to move toward me. The capsule shut behind him. If he'd left anything in there, he would now have to pay 1 sol. Bask took his seat next to me. "Morning, Commander." "Morning," I replied to his greeting and turned my gaze on the 3rd capsule. Current time, 6:01. "Well, shoot. I'll do it. Go wake that slug abed pitilessly," I ordered. "On the way, check your interface. Today's jobs are a bit unusual." "I'm on it." After reading both tasks again, I sniffed and turned to examining my wounds, thoroughly inspecting and feeling every patch on my legs, and not forgetting to have a sniff. Was it just me, or did the wounds reek of fresh pork? Are you afraid, Goblin? So you should be. Be afraid, Goblin. Put some effort in, Goblin. Turn into a worm and you turn into a potential suckling pig. Without being able to speak, all you'll be able to do is oink in your sty. Satisfied everything was in order, I stood up, stretched unhurriedly, and tuned in attentively to my sensations. Normal, to use the language of the system. My hammered muscles were stiff, but they would loosen up on the way to the trade points. The third capsule opened, and Yorka tumbled out onto the floor with a protracted sigh. Blow up and die. Too early. Maybe just another min. We move out in 2 minutes. I gave her no room to negotiate. Read the tasks and let's go. Time is running out, fighters. If anybody is disinclined to work, grunt 3 times and picture yourself as a steak. You'll soon change your mind. Elb, gross. That's not sporting, Goblin. I'm ready. Check the capsule. Bask the zombie advised quietly. Oh, damn. Yes, I forgot my all. Okay, now I'm definitely ready. Move out. Breakfast left us dumbfounded, all 3 of us. Yorka and I gawked in astonishment, while Bask incredulously prodded the ration served up by the system and rolled it around in his palm. New food briquettes. They're around 30% bigger than the usual breakfast doled out to worker zombies, goblins, and orcs. But most importantly, the briquettes were heavier, tangibly heavier. You could immediately tell they had a lot compacted into them. They were bigger, heavier, and had a stronger aroma. Although the price remained the same, 1 soul. Strange. Previously, for the same money, you'd be given a stale piece of bread, but this was hot buttered toast with sausage. I wish life was always like this, said Yorka in an uncharacteristically low, soft voice, gently rocking the briquette in her hands. I felt compelled to bark. Perhaps you'd like to sing it a lullaby? Now look lively and tuck in. Leading by example, I bit off a sizable chunk of my own breakfast. While I was chewing, I mentally ran through the product assortment of the food trading points. It occurred to me that I'd seen larger food cubes in them and at the same price, 3 sol apiece, 3 times what had been deducted from my account. The briquette had a much richer taste to it, although I couldn't understand what it was. Just a pleasant, salty something. Finishing up, I scowled at the fighters and growled like a cranky orc. What are you doing with that? Eat every last crumb. Elb, that's for later, Yorka objected, caught red-handed and continued to tuck a good half of the briquette into her belt bag. Pack it in with your goblin habits, I said. Enough bearing bones and corners. Bask, that goes for you too. What are you doing with that quarter? Same habit, the zombie replied sheepishly. I didn't always used to get food every day. I deliberately wouldn't go pick up my ration so as not to increase my debt. I just nibbled off a gram's worth of briquette and let it dissolve under my tongue. They say that way everything goes straight to your bloodstream and brain. Nothing of the sort, I retorted. Those times are gone. I'm not advising you or requesting you or even demanding of you. I am giving you a clear and mandatory order. Breakfast, lunch, and supper will be eaten to the last crumb on the spot. Each crumb is a certain amount of calories, and that means recovery time, vigor, and energy reserves, which means we can walk or run further, finish jobs quicker, and, if necessary, withstand a lengthy fight or flee from a stronger enemy. We can't do that without energy in our blood, so chew. Yeast. Come again? It's the words yes and eat together. Cool, huh? Yeast eat every last crumb. If only I knew what language we were speaking. I sighed, looking on approvingly as my fighters finished off their briquettes. Hours, Yorka said, shrugging her shoulders. Bask nodded his agreement. Hours. What kind of answer is that? I thought, although I couldn't answer the question myself. After finishing breakfast, we set out. I held back a bit to observe the team, and sighed even harder now, shaking my head ruefully. There they freaking went, all hunched over, hands in pockets, heads down, feet dragging, yawning every 3 paces, greedily eyeing every bench they pass, wanting to sit down or even better lie down and slowly digest breakfast. These weren't fighters. These were precisely the kind of zombies who gathered at Intersection 17 every day and lounged about like walruses in expectation of a random job. Yorka, grab your club, I said gently, in your left hand. Practice a simple move every 10 paces. Elb, quiet. Yeast. Take this all, it's yours now. Always keep it in good condition and close at hand. Look at it. What do you see? It's clean and shiny. Exactly. Let it remain that way. Bask, that goes for you too. Yes, sir. Yorka, tuck it into the belt of your belt bag in such a way that you don't spike yourself in the stomach when you bend over. Otherwise, what happens when you're suddenly forced to sit or bend down? You'll commit olikari. Blow up and die, you'll do what? Shift the awl slightly to the side, but make sure you can whip it out quickly with your right hand. Have a go. See what I mean? It's awkward, too long a maneuver. It needs to be as short as possible. That's better. Let me explain in words first, and then I'll show you a few times. You know part of the combination, but I'm going to add some new elements. Take the club from your belt with your left hand and the awl with your right. Step drag forward, raising the club, and swing sharply down. The plux is held fast. Holding the club tight, kneel down on your left knee and stab hard and fast with the awl. 1, 2, 3. Everybody's going to be looking at me like a what? I asked softly. Like somebody to be envied. That's more like it. Give me the club and the awl. It goes like this. He tucked them into my belt and turned to Yorka. Did you catch that? Of course not. Too quick. Quick? That was slow, I said. That's all physics will allow at the moment. Physics? Bask inquired. The physical condition of the body, I explained. The combination of flexibility, strength, and coordination. So be ready, fighters. From today on, the workload increases. What for? So you don't die in a difficult situation. To extricate yourselves, survive, triumph, and proudly return. Take it away, Yorka. Yeast. Bask, your turn. You're blind. Did you know that? I guess I might be. The zombie coughed. Almost blind. But you always hide your handicap, pulling your hat down so only your chin is visible. That's no way to go about things. But it's easier for him like that, Yorka retorted. Combination every 7th step. I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die in burst, Elb. Sorry. Do what you want with the zombie. Bask, you have the wrong attitude to your limitations. You conceal them when really you need to flaunt them proudly and turn your disadvantages into advantages. Turn blindness into an advantage, Commander? A difficult task, I agreed. But for now, we're only talking about your terrible scars and empty eye socket. It would be stupid to show them off, but you need to make every sighted person you come across see instantly that they're looking at a blind man. A blind, helpless zombie. What does that give us? Well, lots. In case of an altercation with goblins or orcs, though not with pluxes, if an attacker sees you're blind, he'll either ignore you as an insignificant threat and pass on by, or quite the opposite, decide to slap the easiest target first. In either case, you have huge tactical breathing space with a wide variety of potential actions, the likes of which are usually only seen in fairy tales. Huge tactical breathing space with a wide variety of potential actions, repeated Bask in fascination, nodding the brim of his baseball cap up and down repeatedly. I'm all ears, Commander. Huge tactical breathing space with a wide Gah, you're goblins, Yorka said, and not waiting for me to bark the order, resumed practicing her combination. Observing her, I corrected a couple of mistakes and returned to my conversation with Bask. Now I'll show you the first awl stab. It's mean, fast, imperceptible, and ideal for use with an opponent standing right next to you. It's a 2-part move, I warn you. Draw and stab, and no stabbing and smiling gleefully thinking it's all over. Yes, sir. We shall call this stab, Who's There? Genius, Yorka said, chuckling, having run through her combination 3 times. Her recent apathy was gone, replaced by a wave of vivacity, shoulders back, arms tensed, eyes sparkling. Ignoring her sarcasm, I began to explain, taking Bask's left hand and guiding it. You're approached by an obviously dodgy character. Let's suppose he approaches loudly, laughing, cocksure, because you're blind and impotent. What do? Simple. When you realize he's a step away from you, you timidly and falteringly raise your trembling left hand and attempt to grab any part of his body. Who's there? Is anybody there? Hello? As soon as you feel his shoulder, for example, you immediately form a picture of his body, his rough body type, and his position in space. But don't be hasty. Slide your hand quickly down his shoulder, his chest, his other shoulder, depending on your choice of target. The second you understand he is not wearing protection, grab the same shoulder hard, pull him toward you, move forward yourself, and stab like this. Taking hold of his right hand, I pulled it and delivered a stroke. That's if you're aiming for his stomach. If it's the neck, go like this from right to left. Practice those two moves. The essence is speed, not force. Do it. You'll make mistakes, but that's not a problem. You'll learn. Be aware of your expression. It shouldn't be aggressive, but a touch scared and helpless. Facial muscles relaxed, mouth slightly open. Your enemy must see clearly that he can fuck this blind fool up good and proper without him even noticing straight away. Yes, sir. Basque's baseball cap rose by a centimeter. The dreadful scars lashing his face could be seen in all their glory, as could the gaping emptiness of one eye socket and the white of the second eyeball, half concealed by a mutilated eyelid. Keep it like that, I said approvingly. If it gets too uncomfortable, we'll make you a blindfold and raise it slightly at one side. It'll still cover the eyes, but unlike the baseball cap, it won't conceal the fact of your blindness. It might even emphasize it. I'll do it, our sister-in-arms offered. Excellent. Now let's continue training, myself included. I wasn't satisfied with my knees and feet, the general shape of my legs, in fact. A wolf can't survive without its legs, and I seemed to be nothing more than a lame snail. My legs barely supported me during a lunge or a deep squat, not to mention more complicated movements, which would fell me. I would work on my legs. Fortunately, a diagnosis gave me a concise yet optimistic prognosis. Overall physical condition, normal. Limb condition and status. URL, normal. ULL, normal. LRL, normal. LLL, normal. Additional information, mild toxicosis. Mild toxicosis. Yesterday's moonshine libation was to blame for that, although it's possible the remains of the Plux poison were still ambling through my veins. Overall condition, normal. The system couldn't give a toss about the wounds on my feet and my nigh-on useless elbow, though I had received a medical injection. The system had also begun to issue the inventoried additional supplies due to us according to our status as fighter orcs. The first gift, additional vitamins, was administered intravenously. For the second, we were ushered in the direction of the nearest vending machines, which is where we headed, the zombie thrusting his awl, the lady goblin puffing away with her club, and me doing deep lunges. A fighter without strong, resilient legs is simply meat, a piece of pork to be briskly tenderized, flash-fried and wolfed down heartily, leaving beclawed fingers to be licked clean. At the weaponry trade point, I spent 19 sol, 10 on a club, 4 on spikes to go with it, and another 5 on an awl. Not forgetting to snap off the injurious handle on the club, I fitted the spikes to it and hung it on my belt bag. I drew and tried swinging it a couple of times. I hung the awl on the other side. I was now relatively well armed. I cast an eye over the electroshockers and smacked my lips greedily at the knives, the cheapest of which cost 75 sol. The cheapest shocker was 120, and it didn't look all that powerful. The prices were insane. I had no idea about the shockers, although I could use them competently enough, but why were the knives so expensive? How could a medium-sized knife with a plastic handle cost 75 sol? A goblin would never buy such a toy. At best he'd save up for an awl or a club. An orc, on the other hand, by working hard and scrimping, could afford one, although he would be in constant fear of losing such an expensive toy. And anyway, the blade didn't look particularly solid, nor the stamp particularly professional. It was fine when all trade was concentrated in a single pair of hands, for the system could set its own prices and not worry about competition. Once again I remembered the company from the next table yesterday. The girl had been prodding her meat with a huge knife, a hatchet that was too big for her hands and build. She was just showing off, putting on a show, but how much could a hatchet like that cost? I surveyed the assortment in the weaponry trade point, but couldn't find a knife that big. The dearest cost 300 sol and was smaller. I'm essentially a nullbie again. Oh well, let's spend some more. I bought 4 nuts tablets and immediately gave one to each of the team. I continued to scroll down the Tradomats window, spending my remaining 10 sol on 2 small packets of BF-22M medicinal glue. One I gave to Yorka, ordering her to immediately seal all her open cuts and scratches, and not sparingly. She was also to examine Basque. I immediately regretted saying this, as she began enthusiastically spinning the poor zombie like a doll, lifting up his t-shirt, and inquiring with schadenfreude whether everything was in order inside his pants. The embarrassed Basque was forced to resign himself to the inevitable and consented to being smeared in glue. I also gave myself the once-over, sealing a number of grazes I'd noticed. I weighed the packet of BF-22M thoughtfully. 5 sol.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?